speaker, and I'm just going to, we're waiting for my presentation to load, but I'll be talking about the metabolic and epigenetic regulators of skin health and how nutritional interventions influence the key pathways involved. So I'm a cosmetic and nutritional practitioner, and my disclosure is that my company, Bio-Alai, I have a booth out in the exhibition hall. We offer health products and education to help practitioners implement a more holistic model of care. But what I'll be talking about today are some of the hallmarks of aging and their impact on the skin. I'll also look at how they're influenced or how they're affected by perimenopause, and I will look at the nutritional interventions that help to slow them down. So we tend to attribute, and rightly so, the decline that we see during menopause solely due to hormonal decline. But you can see here that estrogen declines in all women, yet some appear to be relatively unaffected by it, whereas others experience very dramatic and rapid changes. And cosmetic treatments aside, because we see these discrepancies in our cosmetic patients, the question is, if it's not just about estrogen deficiency, then what else is going on, and how can we reduce the impact? So facial aging and weight gain are often the most distressing of the symptoms, and there is a large discrepancy in the rate of facial aging between men and women of the same age. So estrogen deficiency clearly plays a role. And while hormone replacement therapy does have skin and metabolic benefits on a molecular level, they don't always translate to a visible external level, which is what our patients are wanting. And the reason is because there are various lifestyle and dietary factors that are contributing to the rate of aging, and these cause the discrepancy between women of the same age. And it all has to do with their impact on the hallmarks of aging, which are degenerative processes that include dysbiosis and inflammation, which I spoke about this morning, and also include epigenetic changes, mitochondrial dysfunction, and impaired nutrient sensing that increase oxidative stress within cells and within the body. And this goes on to contribute to the remaining hallmarks of aging. And we're exposed to these when we're quite young, all of these factors, but our repair mechanisms are able to manage the damage. But as we get older, our repair mechanisms decline, and that's when the damage starts to take over. And it's exacerbated during perimenopause because estrogen and progesterone are protective hormones that inhibit the inflammasome and produce an anti-inflammatory state in the body. So as their levels decline or become disrupted, the immune system is shifted towards a pro-inflammatory state, and that accelerates the hallmarks of aging. So these protective molecules, or deficiencies in these protective molecules, are basically revealing the processes that the hormones were masking. So I'll use skin as an example because that's relevant to us, but this happens in all cells and tissues at different rates. Oxidative stress damages DNA, it shortens telomeres and impairs autophagy, and it increases the accumulation of senescent cells like senescent fibroblasts or keratinocytes. And these are cells that don't function, but they secrete inflammatory cytokines, and these cytokines drive aging. That's what's been termed inflammaging. So research is looking at how we can intervene, and it appears that by addressing these processes that I've circled here, we can, using nutritional interventions, we can potentially slow down the molecular rate of aging and even potentially reverse some of the external signs of aging. So there are estrogen receptors in all organs in the body, and as estrogen decline, inflammation is systemic, and this inflammation causes metabolic disruptions like insulin resistance and fatty liver disease, and that's why these conditions tend to have their onset around perimenopause, and they contribute to weight gain and also contribute to the many skin signs and symptoms and conditions that Jenny just spoke about. So these are metabolic disruptions, and the reason why is because adipose tissue is an endocrine gland that secretes hormones and cytokines. It's actually one of the largest stores of inflammatory cells in the body because we often are carrying over 60% of Australians are carrying a bit of weight. And these inflammatory signals disrupt metabolic function within the skin and systemically. So within the skin, they change glucose, lipid, and protein metabolism, which in turn activates matrix metalloproteinases, and these break down collagen, and there's an increase in free radicals. So if your patients are carrying extra weight, then weight loss is important. It can potentially even downregulate these metabolic disruptions. So from a more molecular perspective, inflammatory cytokines change the way our nutrients are sensing, our cells are sensing nutrients. They change the epigenome and they impair mitochondrial function, and this disrupts cellular homeostasis. So the goal of nutritional interventions is to address each of these processes to restore cellular homeostasis. So I'll go through how that works now. So I'll start with the epigenome, which is a collection of protein and DNA modifications that regulate gene expression. So genes are fixed, but the epigenome is modified by dietary and lifestyle factors. And it really does depend on what we eat and how we live our lives. And one very important modification is methylation, which upregulates the repair and antioxidant genes that are so important in various aspects of skin health. As we age, methylation declines, and so does the expression of these genes. And my studies have found that these epigenetic changes are linked to skin aging and hair loss, as you can see in this image. But there are certain nutrients and an anti-inflammatory diet and various lifestyle interventions that can increase methylation. And there was one human randomized controlled trial that found that these interventions can reverse epigenetic age by over 3 years, within 8 weeks. But epigenetic clocks are very inaccurate, and I think they're quite gimmicky, so I wouldn't run out and go and get your epigenetic clock tested. But a healthy diet and lifestyle is just, there are so many benefits, and it's safe. There's no reason why we can't recommend this to patients. And a healthy diet also helps to support mitochondrial function, and mitochondria are essential for energy production within the cell. They convert macronutrients to energy, and in the process, to cellular energy, and in the process they produce free radicals that initiate cell turnover. So both of these processes are essential for skin health, for homeostasis within the skin, but they both need to be balanced. Now, as we age, that balance is shifted, so energy production declines, free radicals builds up, and eventually this causes mitochondrial dysfunction, which underlies the symptom of fatigue. It's linked to almost every chronic condition, and as you can see here, a number of skin signs and symptoms as well. So this just illustrates the importance of mitochondrial function for skin health. Both of these mice are the same age, but the one on the right had mitochondrial dysfunction induced 2 months earlier. So you can see rapid aging here. This is the same mouse 1 month after mitochondrial function was restored. So we really want to make sure that we're supporting mitochondrial function really at any age. During perimenopause, the balance is shifted even further because of all of the inflammation. There is a rapid decline in energy production, which is why women tend to experience fatigue and brain fog and weight gain. So it becomes even more important to support mitochondrial function. And here on the left, we have the nutrients that are essential for different parts of the mitochondrial chain to proceed. And then there are also polyphenols that help to reduce free radicals, and some of them that I've listed here that also increase the function and numbers of mitochondria within the cell. So these are really quite useful polyphenols. The problem is that as we age, our nutrient needs increase, but our nutrient processing reduces, and it's very hard to get the right doses from our diet, particularly with polyphenols, because the dose that appears to be beneficial is usually a lot higher, is quite high, and their dietary bioavailability is quite low. So if you have a look, the top one, resveratrol, 1 glass of red wine contains 1 milligram of resveratrol, whereas the beneficial dose is believed to be about 1,000 milligrams a day. So we'd die before we even get anywhere close. We could try, so NAD is a molecule I'm sure all of you have heard about, very central to mitochondrial function, and it supports a number of longevity processes, and it declines with age and it declines with inflammation, so it's going to decline much faster in the perimenopausal patient. So research is looking at ways in which we can boost its levels. One study found that an NAD precursor called nicotinamide mononucleotide was able to increase NAD levels and restore normal ovarian function and fertility in an aged mice. And they say that's the equivalent of restoring function in a 70-year-old female. So that's pretty incredible research. And the principal researcher was David Sinclair, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. He's now working on a pharmaceutical version, but that could be many years away. So in the meantime, I'd recommend just basic nicotinamide. It's just basic vitamin B3. It's the direct precursor of NAD. The other two NAD boosters actually need to be converted to nicotinamide before they're used by the cell. And one human trial or human study found that just a single 200 milligram dose significantly boosted NAD, serum NAD and NMN levels. So this is something we can recommend. And nicotinamide, just to give you an idea of how much more effective this is, it's the one that's been mostly used in human clinical trials that are non-industry funded. So, and there's a lot of data supporting the benefits of NAD for other reasons, and even in skin health. And polyphenols, certain polyphenols, an anti-inflammatory diet and regular exercise and intermittent fasting have also been found to increase NAD. So I'm just going to expand on intermittent fasting because it's relevant to the last section, which is nutrient sensing. And it's so popular at the moment, but if it's implemented incorrectly in the perimenopausal patient, it will backfire, and I've seen it happen a lot. So intermittent fasting is basically the more sustainable alternative to calorie restriction, which is the most well-researched of the dietary interventions. There were 2 long-term studies conducted on rhesus monkeys, which are our closest relative, and both studies found significant health benefits, but they actually were conflicting in the health benefits and the longevity benefits. And the differences related to the age at which the calorie restriction was commenced, the timing and quality of the food that was supplied, and the sex of the monkey. And because it's so difficult for humans to follow calorie restriction long term because of homeostatic responses that increase appetite and drop metabolism, that's why the focus has shifted towards intermittent fasting. So I'll look at the science of that and why these same variables apply in humans. So the pathways that are regulated by intermittent fasting are the nutrient sensing pathways, which is one way in which our body manages macronutrients. When we eat, the amino acids and glucose in the meal, along with insulin and growth hormones, activate a molecule called mTOR, which then goes on to regulate cell growth and synthesis. And mTOR inhibits autophagy, which is how our cells recycle cellular debris to produce new cell components. And it's also how our body removes senescent cells, like, for example, senescent fibroblasts or keratinocytes. So it's important for cellular homeostasis. When we fast, an enzyme called AMP kinase is activated, and it inhibits mTOR, and it increases glucose and fatty acid metabolism, so it improves insulin sensitivity, which is really important for skin health, but it also activates autophagy and upregulates the expression of repair genes. So the general idea is that eating and activation of mTOR is aging, and fasting and activation of AMP kinase supports longevity. But just like with mitochondria, it's all about balance. And the problem is we're eating too much and too often, so we're constantly activating mTOR and very rarely activating AMP kinase, which is why cellular debris builds up, and this is what's driving the aging process. Now this study really illustrates that importance of balance. It's a study in mice that looked at the effect of intermittent fasting on wound healing and found that in the fasting state, collagen was broken down and stem cells were activated, whereas in the feeding or eating state, both collagen and the epithelium were rebuilt. So it's alternating fasting and eating is what actually helps with skin renewal. Now, research is looking at various compounds to mimic fasting without actually fasting, and there are 2 pharmaceuticals that are being heavily researched at the moment. One is rapamycin, which inhibits mTOR, and the other is metformin, which inhibits AMP kinase. Now, both of these molecules improve nutrient sensing, but both of them also have limitations. So rapamycin comes with many side effects, and mTOR inhibits one aspect of the mitochondrial chain, which means if it's implemented incorrectly, it can cause mitochondrial dysfunction, and that's something that we really want to avoid. And also, there are no protocols as yet for either of those compounds. And to be honest, even if there were, I can't imagine that one compound is ever really going to mitigate the effects of a bad diet and lifestyle. So that's always the top priority. There are also certain polyphenols that help to activate AMP kinase and autophagy and the removal of senescent cells. There are 3 of them. Quercetin, fucoidan, and fisetin have actually progressed onto human clinical trials because of their ability to remove senescent cells in certain disease states. So these, if you can get them at the right dose that's safe, then these are certainly the better options for now. And of course, intermittent fasting helps to improve nutrient sensing, and this has been found, as we all know, many metabolic and health benefits with intermittent fasting. Certain forms of intermittent fasting have been found to reduce acne and psoriasis and delay skin aging because of their ability to improve insulin sensitivity, regulate immune function, and upregulate the various longevity and repair molecules that we want. The fasting mimicking diet is a form of therapeutic fasting that's possibly the most well-researched. There's a lot of science to back this diet up. And one human study found improved skin hydration and reduced skin roughness when the diet is followed only 5 days a month for 3 months. But it is quite a restrictive diet, so it's one that you want to proceed with caution in the perimenopausal patient. So these are the most popular forms of fasting. The first 2 alternate or restrict intake on alternate or various days of the week, whereas time-restricted eating limits intake to an 8-hour window every day. That's the most popular version, the 16-8 intermittent fasting version. But because everyone is different in their response to different dietary techniques, what the new research is finding is that none of these are actually translating to benefits across the board. And the reason being is that they change our hormones. So one study found that in humans, this is a human study, that both a 24-hour fast and long-term time-restricted eating using that 8-hour window reduce thyroid hormone levels and increase cortisol levels. This is something we really want to avoid in the perimenopausal and postmenopausal patient because these hormonal imbalances are often already present. So as you know, cortisol is the stress hormone, and it increases inflammation in the body and reduces insulin sensitivity, so it causes insulin resistance, and it's been linked to hair loss, various skin conditions is all listed here, and also weight gain. And low thyroid hormones cause a drop in metabolism and similar aesthetic consequences to cortisol. Now the problem is, during perimenopause, women gain weight, and they often turn to these diets to try to lose that weight. And it's only a matter of time, and I see this a lot in my clinic, only a matter of time before they hit a wall and they start to feel more fatigued, they get more brain fog, they start to lose their hair, and then the worst comes because then they can't lose weight no matter how little they're eating. And it's surprising how little some women come into me eating like 200 or 300 calories a day. This is the research that's explaining why this happens. Another thing that's coming out in the research is that during the feeding, or the eating window, feeding sounds like it's so much animal studies. During the eating period, the people are turning to less healthy food, so they're not supplying the substrates that are needed to form healthy cell components or to build hormones or neurotransmitters or even to build muscle. So what's happening is everything starts to decline. And it doesn't even support mitochondrial function. That's a big one. Another thing is that a lot of these forms of intermittent fasting don't support our natural circadian rhythm needs. every single one of our cells need to perform a certain function at a different time in a 24-hour cycle, and they need nutrients and they need the right inputs and signals to do it. And if they're not being supplied, then homeostasis is disrupted. So what the latest research is actually finding is that a 12-hour overnight fast, which is pretty much how we all should be, that's just normal, we shouldn't be eating overnight, it supports circadian rhythm, gives the same benefits as longer fasts without the detrimental effects. So this is safer for our patients. So the most updated recommendations are to focus on getting the everyday diet right and then incorporating intermittent fasting periodically if needed. And these are some of the recommendations we can make for the everyday diet. These are safe to make across the board. There would be very few people who would have contraindications to this. But in the peri- and postmenopausal patient, there are certain aspects of the diet that ideally need to be personalised, because that increased inflammation changes their immune response to certain food compounds and their metabolic and hormonal responses to different dietary techniques. They also become more insulin resistant, so more carb and less tolerant to carbohydrates. Protein needs increase as well. So these are the aspects that need to be personalised, and more research is finding that at this stage of life, supplementation, at least in the short term, is essential while the diet and lifestyle are being optimised. So the key takeaways are that the discrepancies in the rate of aging between women of the same age are largely due to modifiable dietary and lifestyle factors, and by making the necessary changes, we can slow down molecular aging and potentially even reverse some of the external signs and symptoms of aging. Thank you.